Hello, this is Pastor Corey Sulian. Today is June 5th, 2023. Wanted to give you a soul-winning testimony and a tip of the day. I didn't get to give one yesterday on Sunday, just a really busy day for me, but a lot of things going on. But I wanted to share with you what happened yesterday and today. Yesterday, I did not see anybody saved during the Sunday morning service, and so whenever I don't see people saved, at church on Sunday, then I go soul winning before I head home for lunch. And so I went soul winning at an apartment complex because it was really raining most of the day on Sunday. And I wanted to be somewhere where it was covered so I didn't have to, walk from house to house in the rain, things like that. I met this couple and just moved here from Denver just a short while ago. And nice couple in their 60s. But I guess it was late 50s and she was early 60s. But I got to share the gospel with them. And they originally thought that, or she thought she was saved because years ago she asked Jesus into her life. And to me, that's at a non-denominational type church, I think, if I remember what she said. But to me, that's a social gospel. That's not a biblical gospel. A biblical gospel is asking Jesus to save you from hell and give you a home in heaven. And then, let's see, he said that he also had asked Jesus into his life years ago, but did not know for sure that when he died, he'd go to heaven. And I said, have you ever asked the Lord to save you from hell and take you to heaven? And he said, no, I've never done that. And I took the time to explain my testimony, shared the verses and the points of the plan of salvation. And I asked him if he wanted to pray and asked the Lord to save him, and he did. And so I prayed with him at the door while his wife was sitting on the couch. Of course, she could hear everything. When I got done praying with him, I gave him a salvation certificate. And I told him, I said, I like to give people a certificate of salvation when I pray with them. And I said, I'm going to put your name, date, and the time on it. And she piped up and said, well, I prayed the prayer too while y'all were praying. And I said, okay. I said, are you saying you'd like a certificate too? And she said, yes. And so she actually called upon the Lord and asked God to save her from going to hell as well. And I got a picture with both of them. It was real sweet. And then Sunday night we came to church, and there was a family that hadn't been in a while, but they came and brought some of their children, 2 sisters and then 3 children. And one of them had not been saved yet. Another one hadn't been saved either, but she was only 3. She was quite young. But the other one just getting ready to turn 6. He's super, super bright, smart young man for being 5, and shared the gospel with him, answered any questions that he had. He prayed and asked the Lord to save him. Oh, he was so sincere when he prayed. I explained baptism to him, and then his mom was all excited about him getting baptized. So he got baptized last night. And then today I went soul winning, and I was driving to a particular street, and on the way I saw out of the corner of my eye a man standing behind a 7-Eleven up against a wall. So I turned at the light and pulled into the parking lot and went up to him and got to talk to him, just tried to relate to him. He's got tattoos and stuff all over his face. And I asked him if I could pray for him. And he goes, yeah, anything, man. He goes, I need prayer. And so I gave him my testimony before I prayed, and he wanted to be saved. And so I got to pray with him. He told me afterwards that he had just gotten out of jail about less than a month ago. And man, you know what? If these people, they look tough, they go to jail, out of jail, tattoos all over their face, but they're just a human being, just like the rest of us that don't look like that. And if you just treat them with respect and kindness, many of them will listen to you. And that's exactly what he did, man. I just treated him kindly and with respect. Told him I'm out to pray with you. I just want to encourage your heart. And that's all he needed today, was some encouragement. And so I was able to share that with him. Now, let me give you a tip of the day. Earlier, one of my friends who lives in Longview, Texas, sent me a message and said, what do you do when someone says they're not sure they're going to heaven and you explain the gospel to them and then they say, oh, I've done that, right? What do you do? Well, I don't know how it is down south because I haven't really lived down south. I mean, I visited and I understand the Bible Belt, like 90% of the people down there go to church. And I suppose a lot of them have made decisions in church thinking that that might be salvation and things like that. So when you ask somebody, like I did on Sunday afternoon, this is a great example of it. When you ask someone, do you know for sure that if you died, you'll go to heaven, however it is that you ask them, and they say no, they don't know for sure, and then you proceed to explain the gospel, and then they say, I've already done that. Okay, so what do I do? Here's what I do. I believe an overwhelming majority of them are still not saved. Now, some of them are, and they're just not grounded in the Word, so they don't really understand eternal security. So there's a possibility that a portion of them, legitimately are saved, and they just don't, have that eternal security concrete in their heart. But a lot of them have been to churches that preach a social gospel. And what I mean by that is, they say, ask Jesus into your life and you'll go to heaven. Ask Jesus into your heart and you'll go to heaven. Commit your life to God. Ask him to forgive you of your sins. I mean, whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that, and then there's the churches, good grief. They say, if you believe in Jesus, that he died for you, you're going to heaven if you believe. Well, none of those things are biblical, of course. And so when someone says, I don't know for sure I'm going to heaven, I explain to them how to be saved. And then they say, oh, I've already done that, right? So here's what I do. I say, okay, tell me about it. How old were you when it happened? Were you a child, a teenager, an adult? Then they tell me. And I say, okay, were you at church? Were you at home? I mean, what were the circumstances? And then they tell me. And then I say this, okay, when you got saved, because I don't say, no, you're not saved. I don't say it like that. I say, when you got saved, do you remember what you did to be saved? What did you pray? What did they explain to you? Give me some details about it. And most of the time, like I said, it's a social gospel. And so after I explain the gospel, if they say, oh, I've already done that, and then I get the explanation from them, I say, now, here's what I often do. In the Bible, there are verses that deal with your soul, and there are verses that deal with your life. For example, one person that I led to the Lord recently said the church that they were in said that they had to keep the 10 Commandments in order to go to heaven. And I said, the 10 Commandments are wonderful, and God definitely wants us to keep them. I said, but that's verses dealing with our life, not the salvation of our soul. Different thing. The gentleman I led to the Lord yesterday with his wife, he said, okay, let me ask you this. He said, let's suppose I pray, I call upon the Lord and ask him to save me, and then later on I sin. Have I lost it? Or is God just going to keep his word? And so I said, man, that's a great question, and I said, here's what I believe. I said, I believe that when you call upon the Lord and you ask him to save you, you're saved, period. End of discussion. Your name is written in the book of life. You're going to go to heaven. But afterwards, if you decide to live in sin, then you are going to have to pay the consequences. So I gave him an example. One that I often do is about speeding. I said, let's suppose I go down Highway 25 and I go 100 miles an hour in a 75 mile an hour zone. Police officer pulls me over and says, do you know how fast you're going? And I say, well, if you don't know, I don't know, so let me go, But no, I say, well, I was speeding one night. And he said, yes, you run 175, so I got to give you a ticket. And I look at him and say, officer, don't give it to me. I'm saved. Jesus already paid for this sin when I died on the cross, so it's already covered. Man, he is going to laugh at me, or he's going to maybe take me to jail, or I don't know what, but he's going to give me a ticket and I'm going to have to pay for it. So the fact that I'm saved does not excuse the fact that I broke the law 43 years later after the fact. And so I said to that gentleman on Sunday, I said, if you get saved, God will save you. If you call upon his name and put your trust in him, he'll save you and you'll always get to go to heaven. But if you decide to live in sin afterwards, then you will pay the price for that. You'll have to suffer the consequences in this life. And that's what the Bible teaches. You'll reap what you sow. And, and that made sense to him. And he understood that, and he ended up getting saved. So when people say, well, I've already done that, I've already been saved, and they tell me their testimony of what they think is getting saved and it's not, I'll just simply say, there are verses that deal with your life and there are verses that deal with your soul. And I say often to people, I said, man, I'm glad you asked Jesus into your life. That's more of committing your life to God. And I'll explain to them, June 15, 1980, I got saved. I asked the Lord to save my soul from going to hell. In 1987, in the month of June, I dedicated my life to God, and God called me to be a preacher, and I set off on the course of living my life for God. And then I say to people, those are two different things. I said in 1987, I got my soul saved. In 1980, I got my soul saved. In 1987, I dedicated my life to the Lord. So then I circle back around and I say, okay, when you had your experience or decision that you made, was it about your life or was it about the salvation of your soul? And I say, did you specifically ask the Lord to save you from going to hell and give you a home in heaven? Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time they'll say it was about my life, or no, I haven't asked the Lord specifically to save me from going to hell and take me to heaven. And if they say that, then I say, well, according to the Bible, if you want your name in the book of life, if you want to be saved, it's got to be about the salvation of your soul, asking the Lord to save you from hell and giving you a home in heaven. Now, I say, if Jesus was willing to save you, would you be willing to do that? And most of the time, not 100%, but most of the time they say yes. And then I pray with them and give them the prayer of salvation, where they ask the Lord to save them from going to hell and give them a home in heaven. And that seals the deal. That makes it finalized. So there's a lot of people who think they're saved because they've made a decision in church, but the church that they were at did not give a proper biblical plan of salvation. And so therefore they made a decision, but not biblical salvation. And if I can get them to understand that, which it's not as hard as you might think it would be, but if I can get them to understand that, the majority of the time, they'll be happy to pray and ask the Lord to save them. Now, sometimes, though, people are stubborn and they say, no, I've asked Jesus into my life, I'm good to go. And I say, okay, well, I hope so. Or I don't really say I hope so. I don't want to insult them. But I say, I understand. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for letting me talk to you. But the truth of the matter is, I don't like to just take it for granted when they say, oh, I've done that already. Then that means they've already done it. Because 95% of the churches in America, they preach some form of a works-based salvation. And if they made that decision being taught in any way, shape, or form, works and not grace, they're not saved. And so if you can help them to understand that, then that helps them to want or see the need to make that decision. So that's what I do. I hope this was an encouragement to you, gave you some tips that might help you as you go soul winning. Hey, it's Monday, June 5th, but you got a great week ahead of you. Go see somebody saved this week. God bless you.